Test, test, test. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all in this number, and it's nice to be in a live conference after 2 years. My name is Roko Gudic, and I'm going to give a presentation about a relatively new topic that kind of fits well into this digital transformation track, and it's called process mining or process optimization in general. And yeah, just for starters, I'd like to see a raise of hands. Who is working as a data scientist currently? Okay. And how many of you have heard of process mining? Okay, nice. Are you using process mining in your companies? Okay, nice. Some of you. Okay, so for the rest of you, this would be an introductory talk. I'm not going to go into too much of details about process mining, but yeah, I hope we will be able to use some of the concepts and the ideas from this. Okay, so first, I'd like to tell you something about myself. I like to call myself a part-time at-home wannabe chef. I like to break the processes from the receipts. I like to make mistakes. I enjoy listening to music, so if anyone wants to chit-chat about music, I'm free after the talk. I'm a psychologist by my education, but I'm also a data scientist and a data science manager at Infobip. Again, a raise of hands. How many of you have heard of Infobip? Okay, nice. For the rest of you, we are a global communication platform as a service provider. We started in 2006 in a small Croatian Istrian village or a town of Vodnjan. The city of Vodnjan has 3,000 citizens, and Infobip today has 3,500 employees. So we are larger than our hometown. And today we have offices all around the globe. We are currently heading towards an IPO on New York Stock Exchange. So yeah, this is a really great success story for us. These are just some of the facts. So we have more than 70 offices on almost every continent except Antarctica. We have 38 data centers, more than 700 direct operator partnerships, and more than 10,000 unique active business-to-business customers. So why am I saying all of this? Because we are in the business of helping our clients reach their digital potential, or we can say we help them in their digital transformation. And as Gartner says, I know some of you had different percentages, but this is a quote from Gartner. 87% of senior business leaders consider digital transformation as a top company priority, while at the same time, only 40% have brought their initiatives to scale. So there's a huge mismatch between the wants and actually the implementation of the wants. So I would like to talk a little bit about the challenges. What are the challenges in reaching digital transformation? You heard it on the last talks. It's the lack of technical skills, the first one. So IT specialists, cybersecurity specialists, advanced analytics, it's universal for each industry. Lack of organizational and change management. A lot of companies, a lot of industries are old. They are not born in digital era, and they are reluctant to change. They are stuck in their old processes, old way of thinking, and they are risk averse. They are not willing to go into new directions and accept the risks. Evolving customer needs, as COVID showed, we all as a customers want to talk to businesses via different channels. For example, if I don't know, write a mail to my bank and I want them to know that I use Viber, for example, and I want them to answer something over Viber, knowing that I'm the same person. Lack of defined strategy, that's I think, what the previous talk was all about. Strategies are important for every single new activity, and lack of strategy is just, you are destined to fail. Budget concerns, I don't think that I need to explain this bullet more. It's really self-explanatory. Inefficient data management. So if you have like siloed data and lack of data governance, lack of data ownership, this can all hinder the process of digital transformation. And the last one, inefficient business processes. So every single bullet could be a presentation for itself, but since I'm talking about process optimization and process mining, I'm going to talk about inefficient business processes. So now I'm going to list, there are many, many business processes. Everything that happens in a company can be considered a process. So for example, we have recruitment and some stages of this process. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but I'm just going to list out different processes that happen in the company. So, yeah, we have a double screen. Okay, so we have recruitment, invoicing, order processing. You cannot see this. Okay, customer onboarding, product development, sales, so processes are inevitable. And why are they important? Because the efficiency in execution of these processes, or processes in general, makes or breaks companies' competitive advantage. Or to put it in other words, those companies that have their processes thought out well and executed well are in a better position to excel. So traditionally, what you would do in designing some business process would be to gather a lot of people, and in a series of, let's say, workshops, surveys, and brainstorming sessions, you would identify the problem, you would list out all the inputs, all the desired outputs, procedures, then you would map out the sequences of actions that need to be done, and we would put the process, let's say, in production. We would monitor the process, okay, and that is all nice. Some of the companies even use this traditional notation, business process management notation, where it's just a theoretical process. It's a wish list, let's call it, because you think that everyone will follow this series of actions. And as we know, that's not always the case. So what really happens with the processes, we most often don't know. So let's see this imaginary example from an imaginary company, but it could be a good, let's say, proxy for the problem I'm talking about. So for example, someone creates an order at some point in time, and it's all good. At some other point in time, credit is approved, process is doing well, everything is going according to plan. Delivery is created, again, everything is good. But then something happens which is not thought of before. Someone updated the price, and because of that, someone needs to update the original order. And then again, something unusual happens. I mean, unusual. It's not necessarily unusual, but it's out of the theoretical process. And for example, the employee that worked on this specific order, I don't know, goes on maternity leave. And someone else comes into this task and creates, let's say, a duplicate delivery. Things like this can happen. This is imaginary example, but the point here is that you cannot think of all the edge cases and all the exceptions to the rules. And most often than not, these exceptions happen really often. And it kind of reminded me of this. So you design a path, you think that your users will go with that path, but they decide to go elsewhere. And it just, we cannot see this guy now, but he's holding his head. So it gives you headaches. And the truth is, this is a sentence I'm sure you're all familiar with, you cannot manage what you don't measure. So the point is, how can we measure a process? Is there a way we can measure it so that we can optimize it, so that we can manage it? There are different ways to measure a process. We can talk in qualitative manners. So, for example, what is really happening during the execution of my processes? Like, do we really know what actually happens? What actions do our employees perform? Who is included in the process? Does our work have deviations from our design? Do we actually know these facts? Where are the bottlenecks, wastes, or rework? And what is the root cause of each productivity issue? And we have quantitative ways of measuring a process. For example, how long does this cycle last? For example, we can talk in minutes, days, months. For example, sales process can last for months or weeks. Some production cycles, processes can last for minutes, but do we know for sure how long does it take? Do we know how much money is invested in each of these cycles? How much money and people power we use? How much resources do we spend in each of the cycle? And do we know for each step in this process how much cost or how much potential saving can be extracted from each specific step? So all of these questions can be answered with process mining. Process mining is, as Wikipedia says, family of techniques relating the fields of data science and process management. It's actually a way to look at your processes in an as-is fashion. So not thinking theoretically, but looking at the processes from data perspective. And of course, data needs to be in a specific format, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But this family of techniques is actually really helpful in starting to measuring a process, and again, optimizing and finding ways where you can automate and similar. The founder of process mining is Professor Wil van der Aalst from Netherlands, from Aachen University. This field is maybe 10, 15 years old, and it went a long way from academia to implementation in businesses. So it started as a group of students around this professor, and in 10 to 15 years, it started to be really lucrative industry, where we have both open source and closed source companies working on these ideas and on these technologies. This is a forecast by one of the analyst companies. The market size of these process mining tools will reach 3.5 billion by 2026. So before I go further, I would like to just reiterate on some basic terms. So we need a definition of what is a process. It's just a series of actions, so a sequence of actions, repeated in a progressive manner from a start to a finish. So a process needs to have a start and a finish. And it needs to be able to repeat itself over time. Then you can consider something a process. Event log. This is really a key, let's say, a key pillar for being able to do process mining. Event log, this is just an overly simplified example. You can think of it as a CSV file with at least 3 columns. The acronym is CAT, which stands for case, or case ID, activity, and timestamp. I'll show you a little bit later. So a case is some business object. It can be a process instance of, let's say, a sales process. You have some unique ID in your system which relates to this specific process instance. It can be order ID. It can be whatever you choose, as long as you have the activity, so what happened and when it happened. Then you are good to go to start doing process mining. A variant is another term that is really helpful and important in process mining. And variant is actually every single unique sequence of activities. And you'll see why this is important in next slides. So as with every data mining and machine learning projects, there is some sequence of steps, again, to do process mining. First is, of course, data ingestion. This data can be in different systems, and it will never be in a CSV file. It will be some sort of audit database. It will be some sort of, I don't know, tools like Salesforce, Oracle, and ERP tools. They all have these historical tables where you can track changes on some objects. So you have data pretty ready, but still you need to do some sort of transformations, cleaning, as you need to do with any analytics project. The next step is process discovery. And in this stage, there are different algorithms, which I won't go into today, which can help you learn the actual sequences of actions that happen in your process. But you can also take, let's say, an unsupervised, let's say, path to a process discovery via visualizations and stuff like that. I'll show you in the next slides. Process analytics is just the phase where you inspect the variants, all the different paths your process takes. Of course, if you have different contextual data, not just case ID, activity, and timestamp, but you have, let's say, cost associated with some step, or let's say an actor who did what in each stage, or any other business relevant data, you can, of course, slice and dice, group, and look and actually do what you do in next step, and that's process benchmarking, where you can compare different organizational groups and compare the KPIs in those subgroups of your organization. And then something that's called conformance checking, and that is how, let's say, how often do these as-is processes conform to our designed, envisioned process. And I'll go through each of these steps now. In this first stage, like data ingestion, this is actually the minimum that you need to have in order to do process mining. So who, what, and when. This is the foundation. And you see these types of event logs in different systems. I already told you, Salesforce, Oracle, and tools like that have this practically in a ready-to-go format. If you if your data is not in this form of event log, but in some other forms, of course, you would need to do some pre-processing, transformation, cleaning, and stuff like that in order to bring the data into this format, which is ready to be consumed by process mining tools. When you get that data in this format, what you can do is build a so-called directly follows graph of all the actions. But the key here is that those actions need to be chronologically aligned. So you have to sort your data by case, by who, and by time. And then you can visualize it. Of course, you wouldn't do it step by step. You have ready tools, both in Python, R, and proprietary tools, which can help you do that. These are so-called process maps. So you get a really nice visualization of all the different variants superimposed on one another. There, I already told you, this is called a process map, and it's also called a digital twin of the organization. Why a digital twin? Because it actually shows you how your processes are happening in real life. And usually, these process maps are huge, because you have a lot of different variants, a lot of different paths, and once you see this initial process map, then you know it's time to start cleaning and optimizing and reducing the number of steps, enforcing something maybe, automating some steps. But the main idea here is to see the sequences of actions. These are called nodes and edges in graph terminology. So on these edges, you can, this configurable, you can put here like throughput time, or let's say idle time. How much time did it take to complete one activity and start working on another activity? You can put a number of cases that went through this sequence of actions. So it's really a nice compact way to see all the different variants and to see where's the potential for maybe automation, or what steps in this process are maybe unnecessary and take too much time. And it's really a first step into this whole process of process optimization. Here it says process analytics. We have some bugs here, bug on the screen, but yeah, it says process analytics, and this is the place or the part of the process where you actually slice and dice the data. The important thing is that one of the first steps should be designing key process performance indicators, so KPPIs. Those, or we can call them just KPIs. These KPIs help you to compare different parts of organization. So it can be anything from, let's say, throughput time. How much does it take to complete the process? It can be some financial metric, whatever. So in this part, you actually look at the different KPIs and the way some of the sequences are connected to, of course, increase or decrease in a specific KPI. Process benchmarking is really a nice way to start to identify, let's say, parts of organization that are excelling in some specific KPI. So you can, via these visualization tools, just filter your data set by some important business dimensions, and actually identify those parts of organization that are high on some KPI and those that are low on some KPI. And via this extreme groups comparison, you can start to identify what is the root cause. Why is this part of organization so much better than other one? Or questions like that. So yeah, it's really, really powerful tool. Conformance checking is, as I already told you, a way to inspect, okay, we designed this process to have, let's say, 5 stages, and we think that it should take for, I don't know, 3 days. But then we see all of these variants that are not conforming to this design process. And then you actually try to either weed out the unnecessary steps. It's hard to say now because every organization will have its own processes. This is more on a high level, so it's really dependent on the concrete use case. But some of the steps maybe can be just, removed via automation, or just by, inspecting the root cause and seeing what hinders this process. So, as with anything, this is not a silver bullet. It has some benefits, it has some limitations. Benefits are that it's objective and fact-based. That's really highly correlated with the quality of the data, of course. As with anything, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have trustworthy and clean data, this will just, surface this uncleanliness. So if you trust the data, or if you trusted the source, for example, Salesforce, Oracle, whatever, then you can say, okay, what I'm looking at is really objective, it's fact-based, because it's not, we think that our process lasts for 7 days. No, you have really, standardized and objective way to analyze it. It's cheaper, faster. Again, it depends. Cheaper in the sense that you have open source tools that enable you to do anything that we talked about here. It can be more costly if there is a need for organizational, education, and it's easy for the analysts to build, let's say, these tools, but then someone needs to use them. Someone needs to understand the logic of process mining. So it's, it's really up to, the maturity of the organization. But what it does, it eliminates these, lengthy processes, lengthy workshops where you envision the process and it ends up being nothing. And the good thing is that it works on top of existing systems, which means that you can extract the audit data, the event logs from existing systems. You don't need to rip and replace your existing tools. You just put it on top of your existing data. The limitations, you don't see the first one, but not all processes have their digital footprint in your systems. So it's not that every process have audit logs, that it has, data that is ready to be consumed by the process mining tool. Some processes are still relying on manual work, on mouth-to-mouth communication, and it never leaves a digital trail. So it's not capable of, doing process. You're not capable of doing process mining on such processes. And it might be hard to connect the different systems due to, variety of sources, variety of, let's say, types of event logs. But this can all be relatively easily handled if there is a way to connect actions from system A with system B. And the key takeaways are, as we all heard in this track, digitalization is being increasingly important. Organizations do need to adapt their processes and mindset to reach the digital potential. Process mining is one of the tools that can help in this process by looking at existing processes and finding ways where you can maybe optimize, automate, and similar. And of course, I didn't mention before, but there are tools like RPA, robotic process automation, which can, of course, jump in if you see potential for automation in your sequence of actions. You can employ these tools to automate some long-running tasks or parts of the process which can be automated. And that's it from me. Thank you.
minutes for questions. Okay, we have 2 in the back. 3.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Angela Chulibek from ThinkSolver. I'm wondering which processes are you crunching through process mining in InfoBip?
I don't know how much I can say, but we started with the sales process. Okay, because we are using Salesforce and we have this data available. It's in a little bit different format. We needed to do transformations and stuff like that, but yeah, short answer is sales process.
Sales process. Okay. Another question.
Okay.
Have you managed to improve sales process in InfoBip? And can you share with us some maybe bottlenecks you identified, or like any challenge in process mining in InfoBip?
Yeah, okay. The biggest challenge is actually telling the business stakeholders to look at your tool and look at the results and everything, because they all have their own, ways of working. And yeah, I think it's the hardest part is actually enforcing, maybe enforcing is the hard word, but kind of tell them to trust this analysis, because it can happen, I don't know, for some region, some KPIs are huge. For others, they are really low. And when you approach the region, they say, no, this is not true, blah, blah, blah. It's really, really hard to actually push it into the production. And that's something that we are still working on.
Okay, can I have one more question?
Yeah.
Do you do process mining through with Python, or you're using some tools like the tool from the professor Wanderals?
We started with R and Python tools, and we tried to create our own, dashboard and these process map visualizations, and then we came to the conclusion, why should we do front-end development? Let's just take some third-party tool, and we did that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Roko.
Hi.
My name is Valentina. Thank
Hi,
you for
Valentina.
such an informative talk. My question would be, in a company where you have tens or hundreds of processes, what would your strategy be for choosing the first one to start with?
I'll refer to the talk before. Start with business objectives and look at the places where you can use the data to facilitate, execution of business processes. But then again, there's a trade-off. If data is not easily accessible, there are trade-offs. But I would start with, the business objectives and look for the places or the processes where we can have the biggest impact, and then see, okay, do we have the data? Can we access the data? If the data is not accessible, then move to the next one. And yeah, that's the screening process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for an interesting presentation. Could you tell us how much process improvement have you achieved?
To be honest, it's really not in that phase that we can say, okay, we managed to do this. It's still work in progress. We are still trying to push it, and yeah, it's work in progress.
But do you have enough proof of value to continue? You obviously have.
Yeah.
And another question, so this process mining can be applied to processes supported by humans as well as machines?
Yes, as long as these processes leave this digital footprint. If you have a way to, access the data, then of course you can use process mining. If it's, part of the process is me telling you, okay, I did something, and you tell that information to someone else, we don't have written proof anywhere. It's really hard to then analyze anything. So that's why we started looking at the processes where we have this data readily available. But a lot of our internal tools also have audit logs and everything you can see. But it's kind of hard then to connect everything. I don't want to go into too much details, but it's hard to connect different systems. So we looked at the tool that can, help us do it faster.
Thank you.
Another question. Okay.
Hi, my name is Bojan from Umlaut. Thank you, Roko, for a very insightful presentation. My question is, what kind of skills are required to run process mining? You mentioned you started with Python and R, and then you switched to some external tool, I guess.
Yeah.
So what kind of skills, what kind of, let's say, profile we need to run this in your organization?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because you have one group of actors in this process. Those are the data scientists or analysts, which, of course, then you can have, I don't know, data engineers to extract, but let's keep it simple. So people, operational teams who will, you know, build the, let's say, the analysis, do the analysis. Then you need some sort of front-end dashboard or BI tool. So we have our BI team. We are based on ClickSense. So we just needed to do our job. They will do the, you know, the visualization part. That was in the former stage because we tried to build our own dashboard and stuff like that, but it's not important now. And the most important aspect is to educate the, you know, the business users of these dashboards. Because when they see this process map, they are like, what is this? You know, so you have to push the education in that direction. You probably won't have internal knowledge on this because it's relatively new. So it's a bit of an effort. But regarding the operational team, it's really, I mean, all the knowledge and all the articles is publicly available, and this professor is really pushing in this open source community. So it's relatively easy to kickstart it.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Okay.
Well, if not, it's a lunchtime. Yep. Thank you, Roko, for
Thank you all.
for a great
Bye-bye.
presentation.